The Khabarovsk war crimes trials were the Soviet hearings of 12 Japanese Kwantung Army officers and medical staff charged with the manufacture and use of biological weapons, and human experimentation, during World War II. The war crimes trials were held between December 25 and 31, 1949, in the industrial city of Khabarovsk, in the Soviet Far East. It's speculated that the Soviets made deals with the Japanese in exchange for their Unit 731's research, but instead of giving the suspects complete immunity, the Soviet authorities took the research in exchange for lenient sentences. During the trials, the accused, including Major General Kiyoshi Kawashima, testified that as early as 1941 40 members of Unit 731 airdropped plague-contaminated fleas on Changde, a city in the Hunan province of China. Judges found all 12 accused war criminals guilty, sentencing them to terms ranging from 2 to 25 years in labor camps. In 1956, any defendant still serving their sentence was released and repatriated to Japan. In 1950, the Soviet Union published official trial materials in English, titled, Materials on the Trial of Former Servicemen of the Japanese Army Charged with Manufacturing and Employing Bacteriological Weapons. These included documents from the preliminary investigation, like the indictment, some of the documentary evidence, and some interrogation records, testimony from both the accused and witnesses, final pleas of the accused, some expert findings, and speeches from the state prosecutor and defense counsel. Published by state-run Foreign Languages Publishing House, the Soviet publication has long since been out of print. But in November 2015, Google Books determined it was now in the public domain and published a facsimile of it online, offering it for sale as an e-book. Speaking to the overall judicial integrity of the proceedings, bioethics expert Jing Baone said, despite its strong ideological tone and many obvious shortcomings such as the lack of international participation, the trial established beyond reasonable doubt that the Japanese army had prepared and deployed bacteriological weapons and that Japanese researchers had conducted cruel experiments on living human beings. However, the trial, together with the evidence presented to the court and its major findings, which have proved remarkably accurate, was dismissed as communist propaganda and totally ignored in the West until the 1980s. Historian Sheldon Harris described the trial in his History of Unit 731. Evidence introduced during the hearings was based on 18 volumes of interrogations and documentary material gathered in investigations over the previous 4 years. Some of the volumes included more than 400 pages of depositions. Unlike the Moscow show trials of the 1930s, the Japanese confessions made in the Khabarovsk trial were based on fact and not the fantasy of their handlers. The very wealth of trial documentation that tended to confirm that the Khabarovsk proceedings were not a show trial, also led Harris to question the relatively light punishment given out. All of defendants, aside from one who died in prison and another who committed suicide, had been released by 1956, 7 years after the trial took place. Harris also says, the Soviets made a deal with the Japanese similar to the one completed by the Americans, information in exchange for extremely light sentences. The Soviets and their successors never released the interrogation reports of their Japanese, some 18 volumes. This leads me to believe that the Japanese did arrange a deal, did yield some information, and the Soviets settled for the best goodies they could get. Harris also noted other controversies sparked by the trial, which linked Emperor Hirohito to the Japanese biological warfare program, as well as allegations that Japanese biological warfare experiments had also been conducted on Allied prisoners of war. One of the experts called upon by Soviet prosecutors during the trial, N.N. Zhukov, later served on the panel of scientists investigating Chinese and North Korean allegations of United States biological warfare in the Korean War.